I really like this battle, and this is the first time we can really take a good army into the field and do some effective work. So yeah, the numbers are pretty close. The enemy has more artillery than we do. This is going to be a lot of fun. And this is really the first time we can start to use the principles of war, of mass, shock, surprise, maneuver. In this campaign, you can't just charge into the Confederates. The Confederate infantry is just like historically, they're just not going to roll over for you. You have to put them at a huge disadvantage and grind them down over time. Because just like historically, these guys, this is not total war combat. The enemy will simply fall back, recover, and come back and fight again. So pretty much if you just charge head-to-head against the enemy, what's going to happen to you is exactly what happened historically, is you're going to take enormous casualties. This is a lot more like World War I and trench warfare than it is, some other Napoleonic warfare. And that's one of the problems is initially they were thinking in terms of Napoleonic warfare, and the weapons were just way too deadly for those kind of tactics. So I put it on fast forward because you notice I got out of there. I'm not going to fight 3 units against the entire Confederate army and try to hold that flag and call in reinforcements. I'm going to hit the enemy. I'm going to put the enemy at a disadvantage through the principles of war, which first of all will be maneuver. You have to be able to hit the enemy with a mass of troops and be able to degrade them, and use artillery and infantry to inflict casualties on the enemy. So I am now spotted. The enemy has found me, and here they come. Just like historically, these Confederate units are very aggressive, and you'll find they're very fast. You're never going to win. My experience is melee combat against these one-on-one. Your units, even if you win, are going to be exhausted. So what I'm doing is I'm starting, part of my army is beginning a maneuver to get on the flank of the enemy, while part of my army is staying back to deflect any kind of an attack. And this is the Confederate army. They see you, they're going to attack. It's just, that's kind of how they were historically, and that's kind of what you're going to find in the game, and you have to be able to survive their assaults. And sometimes they come in small numbers, and sometimes they come in huge waves that do enormous damage, but they're going to attack. And I really didn't have room to fall back here, so my unit just had to stand its ground because I'm up against the edge of the board. But this is a really good thing to do, is have units pour fire into any enemy unit that's in melee, and look at the destructive power of that 24-pound howitzer. It's just a devastating weapon. Here he comes again, and I'm blocked. I just saw if I could fight, and I'm blocked. And I really want to get both these units to have a shot on this guy. I'm still blocked until they get into melee. And pop a skirmisher so you don't follow the guy halfway across the board. And he takes enormous damage. I want to make sure this flank, the guys on this flank, I want them to stay hidden. Didn't move my cav in front of my infantry to scout ahead. Get the last couple shots, but I have to get that unit out of the zero cover in the river. Yeah, he's got 19% cover. I'm willing to take a few hits to get a nice shot on that retreating unit, but now that unit has lost, the retreating unit has lost morale. and condition, but he's going to come back and he's going to fight. So even though he's degraded, he's not out of this battle. And that's the way this works, is you have to inflict casualties on the enemy over and over and over and grind them down to nothing. They won't shatter until they've been completely beaten and their numbers have been reduced so small that they can't take any more damage. So I'm detaching skirmishers to go up and deal with this cav on my flank. And I'm detaching other skirmishers before I advance into this wood line. You never want to advance blindly into something where the enemy might be there. You kind of get caught in an ambush. I would like for this this infantry unit to be able to join my main attack, but no, he's moving more infantry down toward my position, and I've got to protect that artillery. I'm not going to risk that artillery unit. I really protect my artillery units. And throughout the campaign, I don't lose a single gun, which is pretty remarkable. You always lose some cannon, but I don't lose any. I'm not against losing cannon. I should be more aggressive. I normally lose a few guns in a playthrough. I never lose a unit, but I always lose a few guns, and you should if you're putting your artillery right on the front where they belong, so they can get the best possible damage on the enemy. I was really surprised I didn't lose any, and that means I wasn't being aggressive enough with my artillery. Okay, this is one of the principles of war, maneuver. I am maneuvering onto the enemy's flank. I know the enemy is going to defend that flag, and I suspect he's drawing up a line facing my position across the river. I have maneuvered onto his flank, and hopefully my detached skirmishers will give me some visibility of what this line looks like. But I want to hit him with mass and shock and surprise, which means I want all of my troops to hit this point and break his line right here, and then roll up his entire line. So these guys have done a good job of driving this cav off, but I need these guys in the main attack. And that's economy of force. Another principle of war, economy of force. The main attack is happening over here. I need these my cav to join in the main attack. My skirmishers, my cav, those guys are going to have to keep his cav out of the battle. The attack is happening on my right, the enemy's left flank, and we need to get after them fast. Notice how everybody's on run. This is a time to run short distances in order to get in positions to deliver hammer blows to the enemy units and rout them, one after another. My cav gets up, and I want my cav to go after that artillery. He has more artillery than I do. I think I kept his cav pretty much out of this, which is what I wanted to do. Oh, that unit is just in an impossible position. So the purpose of that cav unit is now to do damage to the enemy rear, taking out his artillery, taking his supply away from him. I don't really care about the objective. The objective is not the point. It's to inflict damage on the enemy, who should now be in exactly the wrong position. So we were able to crush the enemy's flank and roll his units up and do a lot of great damage to his... Yeah, and you tell your units to face a direction by telling them to fire at a unit. They turn very fast and will fire. You don't tell them to change facing direction. Well, like I just did there. I'm just telling my unit there to move forward, so that was okay. Yeah, these fortifications are pretty much death traps, and that enemy unit just instantly routed when he took a few volleys, which is what they do in these horrible death trap fortifications. And his artillery is now also doomed. My cav is behind his infantry. That's just great. He can do all kinds of harassing fire. And the enemy's charging. The flag fell, and you can expect when you take the flag, the enemy will charge. And first thing I want to do is fall back, get out of his charge. These units are fairly fresh, and I don't want to fight these guys face to face. Notice the unit on the right collapsed because he got hit in the front and the flank. And we can take real advantage of that as he falls back into an area with very little cover. And now to continue this attack, I need to bring this artillery up and pound on these units one at a time with artillery and concentrated infantry fire. We got as much out of the initial attack as we could have hoped. Now we have to kind of pause and reorganize and plan for the next phase of battle. This army is not beaten, it's just received a heavy blow. And it was a pretty significant blow. We rolled up his flank and inflicted a lot of casualties. But this is still a fresh army that is going to be able to fight. So now we have to prepare for how we're going to deal with him now. His cav gave me the slip, so that's not good. One of my units is in the rear recovering condition, and I don't really want my units to, charge all the time. I want them to charge, move fast, fight, deliver volleys of fire, and then, of course, this cav is going to try to, do something to the rear of my line. I'm going to make it a point to wipe that unit out. And I like to dismount my cav in the woods because they take a lot less damage and they do very good work. But they will run out of ammo. Yeah, if he wants to advance, then someone there should hit him in the flank. And moving closer to my artillery was probably not a really good idea. I think the key to this game is just be patient and know when to attack really hard and aggressively and know when to be patient. He's attacking, so I fall back and look for flank shots and rear shots. He retreats, I advance. But this enemy still isn't defeated. If you want to, he's going to fall back into the woods. And it's going to be a hard fight you're going to have to dig him out of those positions. And I know this. I know that I'm going to have to go in there and dig him out of those positions. And, you know, as I think about this, I think about Pickett's charge. Absolute disaster for the Confederate Army. But when the troops that survived Pickett's charge retreated, they didn't just shatter and disappear from the battlefield. They fell back and they took up defensive positions. There were an enormous number of artillery pieces that had been resupplied. The enemy took up good positions. It would not have been for the North just walk across the field and capture the Confederate Army. They were going to fight, and they were going to fight hard. And if you want to defeat them, yeah, that unit was really small, so there was an opportunity. And I didn't charge them, I just walked into them. Walking into them is a lot easier on condition and morale than charging. If you want to defeat them, you have to apply overwhelming firepower to them all the time. And that's what this is about, overwhelming firepower. Now you play the Confederates, it's a little bit different. You have fast, strong infantry that can fight really well. Kind of shock troops. When you're playing the North, you don't have that. You have to build armies that have superior firepower and use that the weapons you have to bring concentrated fire onto enemy units one after another and then grind them down. You have to be very patient in how you approach this. Like right now, I would never think about charging into the enemy. It would just become chaos. But what I want to do is bring that artillery up and just keep chipping away at the units. Hopefully these two detached skirmishers can take that cav out. I want to surround them and hit them from all sides with overwhelming fire. Also, if you get into a lot of hand-to-hand fighting, a lot of melee combat, you tend to lose officers. And you'll see me do this a lot. Keep that supply wagon moving. The supply wagon should keep all of your units topped off so you never run out of supply. So I have this on, going through at faster than normal speed. So I'm pulling my cav out because I'm really tired of fiddling with his cav. I want to go get them. So his numbers have been reduced, and I should have enough overwhelming size that I should be able to take this guy out. I mean, I have 4 detached skirmishers and over a 3-to-1 advantage with my cav unit, so... And he's down to nothing, so... Yeah, my army is exhausted. The condition of all the units is really terrible. So I have one unit in the back kind of resting. That's a good idea, to take units out of the line and have them just rest. So you have units that are always in a state of recovery for if you need a fresh unit. And keep the supply wagon doing its job. That is the single most important thing. Do not run out of ammo. he has a couple of units that are getting very small in size, 373 and 63. I can move up to those guys and maybe get them to shatter. Yep, that's actually a pretty good idea on his part, to charge the skirmishers on the right, because there's no infantry backing them up. If he can bust out of there, he can escape. And there's the fresh unit in reserve. It's always good to have a unit in reserve. If he had been able to break out there, that fresh unit could have been there to plug the gap. But he didn't break out. I don't want any of them to get away. I want to bag them all. Keep moving the artillery up to get canister fire, which is not going to be as effective because they're in pretty good cover in the woods. And then you have to grind them down. So I'm looking at these numbers. Boy, I have a lot of units with 1,000 kills. This is really going to be good. One lost unit, one lost commander. Now, this is pretty normal. The enemy isn't just going to quit. You have to break them and grind them down. And it takes a while, particularly if they have good cover. And now I'm swapping out a fresh unit for a tired one. And that's a good idea too. Units with high condition that have recovered a bit, you swap them out on the front line and they'll be more effective. So I'm going to swap out another fresh unit. And that's what you do. You hit fallback and then you tell the unit behind to run into place, and the fresh unit takes the place of the tired unit. Move the artillery forward so canister will break them faster. Oh yeah, the 24-pound howitzer just, that was devastating. Now this is what I had planned for the last battle, but unfortunately I didn't get it. Now you can get too close to the enemy when they're in a corner like this, where your units start to block each other. Um, yeah, he can't take many more of those. This is about to be over. Yep, and there it is. And I don't know where the last little tiny enemy unit is, but we're going to just go ahead and end this with medicine, which is now at 4%. About 2,000 to 9,000 casualties. 2 to 1 I consider a defeat. 3 to 1 is a draw. 4 to 1 is a victory. So yeah, that was great. Look at the 24-pound howitzer. That is typical of what a 24-pound howitzer can do in a small battle. And they can do twice that in a big battle. All the units did really well. I'm very, very happy. The biggest news is I have my first 2-star. So now my entire corps will get a second perk, which is a big deal. That's why your first 2-star becomes a corps commander, to give every unit in the corps it's a perk. These are good weapons. I'm going to make good use of all of these, except for the hunters. I've used hunters before. They're fine, but they need too much micromanagement. But yeah, this is great. This was a fun battle. Really enjoyed it. Completely successful in everything I wanted to accomplish. And now every unit has a star. So that's great. Ready to go to the next battle.